A well-earned point away at the champions and some VAR controversy. Rarely will a 0-0 draw give us so much to talk about. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Total Saints podcast. This is Martin Starke, and each week I'm joined by our esteemed panel to reflect on all things Southampton Football Club. Coming up this week, reaction to the Manchester City game and an in-depth look ahead to a busy week, which sees Saints travel to Sheffield United in the Carabao Cup before Wolves visit St Mary's in the Premier League on Sunday. Plus, we'll announce the winner of our Total Saints Icon online store competition. Once again, a big welcome to our resident Saints panel, owner of SaintsWeb, Steve Grant. You've seen some live football this week, Steve. How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, the team I was supporting was on the wrong end of things, but it was all very familiar. Dominate the game for an hour and a bit, miss all the clear-cut chances you create, and then get mugged at the end. So kind of like a warm blanket. Just very familiar.
Okay, also with us is writer of the blog League One -10, Glen de la Cour. How's your week been, Glen?
Yeah, not bad. It's just been the standard working from home week. Had some fun football this morning. My son's team won 9-0, which was nice. And we had an 18-year-old referee who was refereeing his first ever game. And on a day when we're no doubt going to be talking about referees, just have to say he was absolutely excellent. So, just one for John Moss there. It can be done.
I just wonder what makes an 18-year-old lad want to become a referee.
Money.
Given the headlines this weekend.
There is a bit of a story behind that. They get paid for it, so 25 quid or whatever is probably quite nice. But the league tried to give us the same referee who we had last week, who I may have had a word with, and he declined to referee us. So I felt a little bit bad about that, but honestly, this 18-year-old kid was much better.
When you say you felt a little bit bad about that, for how long?
No, not at all, actually. Not at all.
I'm also pleased to say the Athletics dedicated Saints reporter Dan Sheldon is back with us this week. How was the Etihad, Dan?
Yeah, it was a really good day, all in all. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, enjoyable game. I went there and I was saying to my athletic colleague Sam Lee, like it's good going to places like that because you tend to see a top level football team. I didn't think it was going to be Southampton on the day. I must admit, I thought I was going to be watching a City riot, but no, all in all, really good. Thank you.
Good. As always, the biggest hello and thank you goes to all our patrons who are listening around the world. This is episode 168 of the Total Saints podcast.
This is the Total Saints podcast with Martin Starke, Steve Grant, Glen de la Cour, and the Athletics' Dan Sheldon.
So we start with a look back at the weekend's game, a point away at Manchester City. And I think it's fair to say none of us saw that coming, much like the second half VAR penalty decision. Glenn, do you want to start with VAR and John Moss? You've obviously been stewing on this.
Thanks.
Coming off the long run-up.
Okay. Well, basically, apart from said incident in the game, I found myself thinking I'm going to have to say that John Moss refereed the game quite well, because aside from that incident, he did actually referee it quite well. But after that incident, I'm back to calling him a fat wheezing old mess, because he's just there are so many things wrong with the whole process of how we ended up with absolutely nothing from that. I mean, to start off with, he gave the decision of a foul. He pulled out the red card, which was wrong. Straight away, that was wrong, because you're only supposed to do that now if there's no attempt to play the ball, the double jeopardy rule. And Walker did at least make some sort of effort to get to the ball. VAR should not overturn it. It's not a clear error. And the VAR, to be honest, the VAR referee, Martin Atkinson, should never have called him over, because he should have been able to look at it, see that the first contact was Walker sort of hitting Armstrong around the back of the neck. And the narrative seems to be that he was on his way down before Walker made contact. Well, that's complete rubbish. So between them, they've combined to completely cock it up. If we'd have had Mike Dean, there's no way he would have overruled his own original decision. But I think it just shows how weak John Moss is, that he is prepared to do that. And it's just dreadful. We've now got a very long string of terrible decisions out of John Moss, and no one cares because it's Southampton. And that's just seems to be the way it is. I mean, we've got the sort of heavyweight pundits chiming in and saying, I can't believe they didn't get anything for that. But
the rest of us can.
Yeah, having watched that incident, it should never have been a red card, but it should definitely have been a penalty.
So we've all seen it a few times now, I'm sure. Steve, can you see why he didn't give it? Can you make the case for the defence?
No. I mean, usually I would try and take the sort of objective view and look at it and try and find a reason why we've been completely screwed over yet again. But on this occasion, I just can't see it. Kyle Walker makes absolutely no contact with the ball at any stage. As Glenn says, it's clear that he did make some sort of attempt to get there, but you look at the video and you look at it from whatever angle you choose from, and he doesn't get there. And Adam Armstrong ends up underneath him, and it's just a foul. It's clearly a penalty. And Moss was right in the first place to give it, and yet, yeah, how has he decided that? Oh yeah, sorry, actually, I very very clearly got that wrong. This is definitely a decision that I should be overturning in a season where we've been told that the whole thing is going to be much more light touch, not just VAR, but refereeing in general. So you've seen a lot more challenges go sort of unpunished, and the game has flowed a lot quicker for the most part. And yeah, I don't understand how he's decided that he's made a clear and obvious error there. That's mad.
So the argument that Armstrong was already going to ground, we don't agree with that then, any of us?
No, I mean I don't, because I think if you watch it again, that you can see the first contact is nothing to do with the feet. It's Walker sort of barging him in the back of the neck or around the shoulders, sort of thing. So no, if he was on it, why would Armstrong fall down at that point? He's he cleaned through and he's trying to get a shot away. It's just rubbish, I'm afraid.
What were the managers saying afterwards, Dan? Obviously, you were there yesterday. Was that the main talking point afterwards in the press conference?
Yeah, from Rav's point of view, it certainly was, and I think he was kind of along the lines of Stephen Glen wasn't too happy. But I actually have the other view, to be honest. I think if that's given against your team, I think you're mad. Like, I think you'd be fuming that penalty has been given. I think the problem for me, and I may be wrong on this, and the rules may be different, but had he not given a red card, I honestly don't reckon he would have overturned the penalty. But someone's obviously got on his ear and said, I don't think that's a red card. So he's gone to look at it, and then he's deemed, okay, well, I don't even think it's a foul. Had he not got his cards out, I don't think that would have been overturned. But I think simply because he's given that red card, Atkinson said, oh, you might want to go and have another look at that, because I don't think it's a red card. So he's gone to have a look at it. And I just don't think, for me, I don't think it's a penalty. I mean, I didn't watch Match of the Day last night, so I've not seen countless replays. But yeah, I just don't think it was a penalty. I think if Armstrong stays on his feet, I think Kyle Walker wins the ball.
He can't stay on his feet. He's got a guy on his back.
But when you look at when Armstrong's on the floor, when Kyle Walker is pretty much putting his leg in, he's already on the floor. So what's he going to do in that situation?
Because he's been pushed there around the back of his neck.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I buy that.
Well, whatever way, it certainly wasn't a free kick to City, which is what he ended up giving. I mean, it's just a shambles.
Yeah, the whole thing. I think, as I said, had he not given the red card, I honestly don't think he would have overturned the penalty. It's one of them. I mean, if it happened to my team and I wasn't given it, yeah, I'd be crazy. If it was given against my team, I'd equally be mad at the same time. So for me, I'm kind of on the fence with it, but I don't think it was a penalty. Look at the one today, Ronaldo. I mean,
well, that was Martin Atkinson as well.
Yeah, see that.
So he's had a wonderful weekend.
But yeah, I mean, I think once he's given it, it wasn't for me clear and obvious enough for him to overturn it, and that therein is the issue. But then I guess, and I don't know this, had he not given the red card, he wouldn't have been encouraged to go and take another look at it.
So we've been asking, and people have been saying the referees should be going over and making better use of the pitch side monitors. So can we expect to see more of this, do you think, Steve? Is this going to be just par for the course this season?
I guess as a percentage of reviewed decisions, yes, probably. But I think the general idea is that fewer things are either reviewed or fewer things are kind of dwelled over. So actually, I think as a sort of raw number, I actually think the number of sort of pitch side reviews will be reduced. Not that they were particularly high last time anyway, but yeah, it's just been I think everyone's kind of thought that the refereeing and the VAR usage this season has been a lot sort of much improved on last season, and this weekend has kind of set the whole thing back fairly significantly, I'd say.
Well, we are, 4 or 5 games in, and this is the first time we've been talking about it. So we've done all right so far. I've written VAR to the rescue. But Glenn, that was clearly an offside goal, wasn't it? So even the naked eye, I think, would have given that one at the end.
Well, it annoys me that some people are saying, it evens out. It doesn't. He's offside, end of story.
And the linesman flagged for it.
And everything. So it doesn't even out. Sterling is clearly offside. The goalkeeper's touch makes no difference. It doesn't make it a new phase of play. So it's offside, and I wasn't remotely worried, apart from the usual sod's law. Wouldn't it be great if this got given? Just on first view, I could see Foden wasn't offside, but when Foden heads the ball, you could see that Sterling is offside. So I wasn't remotely worried for a second that was going to get given. So no, it doesn't even things out, and it doesn't make me feel any better about the decision that we didn't get. But
we were all just sat there waiting for that goal, though, weren't we? Because we've seen it so many times before. Yeah. That goal at 90, 92, even 95 minutes. It wouldn't have been a surprise had it come. But thankfully it didn't. Well, let's start with the team selection, actually, because there was another change in personnel. I mean, the team news was announced at 2:00. I think there were a few shocks in there. Obviously, Salisu and Gineppo dropped, Peru as well. Kyle Walker-Peters back in, along with Bednarek and Adams. We were talking about the need for Ralph to keep everybody happy, Dan. I know you had written about this. So it kind of made sense, didn't it, to bring them back in?
I didn't understand the Salisu one, if I'm being totally honest. I think he had a man-of-the-match performance against West Ham, and his reward for that is getting dropped against Man City a week later. And I think, that one surprised me. Kyle Walker-Peters, that one doesn't really surprise me, because I think I've said on this podcast before, I've certainly written about it. Like, I think if you're Ralph, you just have to get him in the team, because I think he is the club's, in my opinion, best fullback. So if you play him at left back, fine. I'd rather see him on the right, and push Tino up. But yeah, I think you get Kyle Walker-Peters in the team. Romain's new. He's still gonna, he's been impressive when he has played, but I think he's still going to take a bit of time to kind of fully get up to speed with everything. So the Salisu one was the surprise. Walker-Peters starting didn't really surprised me too much. I would have been more surprised if he was left out of this game on that one.
And a more positive team selection than against West Ham, which raised a few eyebrows, Glenn.
On the face of it, it did, because I thought we'd go for the same formation that we played against West Ham. But as I said last week, I think I'm giving up trying to analyse the team selections and whatnot, because in addition to what Dan just said about Salisu, which was 100% correct, Perot played really well last week, and I thought Gineppo had a decent game, and they all got left out. So again, it's another horses for courses. Ralph has played the 4-2-2-2 formation against City before, the game we won at St Mary's during the lockdown. We played that, and we restricted them in midfield that game, and just the way we played, the fact that we were on the front foot when we were defending, and Romeo and Ward-Prowse, who had sort of dodgy-ish games last week, were both superb this week. So it was a big feather in the cap for the manager, I thought, and I thought he managed the game well. The substitutions were spot on, and we overcame the early injury to Jack Stevens as well. So Salisu got on the pitch fairly quickly anyway. So it all worked out pretty well. I think everyone's going to be scratching their heads a little bit at some of the team selections this year, but that's the way it's going to be with the size of the squad that we've got, and the manager's obviously prepared to use it.
And that's a good thing, though, isn't it, Steve? If we can't predict the starting 11, it's going to make it more difficult for the opposition to do the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, much like what we've kind of always said about Gineppo's performances. If he doesn't know what he's going to do next, then how's the opposition going to be able to do it? Yeah, I think that kind of works the same with Ralph's team selections. And yeah, I mean, whatever they worked on this week obviously worked. I mean, obviously we've got to put into the context that Man City obviously only heard from the Premier League's fixture secretary about this game on Saturday morning. So they only had, according to Guardiola, they only had 10 minutes to prepare for this game. So yeah, I mean, in that space of time, they obviously haven't got any time to analyse what we're going to do and set themselves up accordingly. I mean, it's not like their team has cost £750 million to put together, is it?
And he bought Mahrez, De Bruyne and Foden off the bench.
Their team news was that De Bruyne was back, and our team news was that Shane Long's recovered from COVID. It kind of sort of puts it into perspective a bit. Dan, I think you mentioned the Leipzig game this week on, was it Wednesday or Tuesday night? A bit of a clue there as to how Ralph was going to set up. That was obviously quite useful for us in terms of wearing City out, but also how we might play and what we can learn from that.
Yeah, I think I didn't actually watch the Leipzig game myself, but Ralph, didn't really hide the fact that he was obviously paying close attention to it. They're his former employers, and he obviously saw a blueprint and was speaking to, his former colleagues within the club over the week and after the City game to get a feeling and I guess some analysis or whatever. And he came to the Etihad with a clear plan, and I think that was so obvious. And that for me, I know VAR will always get the headlines, but I think the whole penalty thing actually detracts from how good Southampton were. I mean, I would personally rather talk about how good they were at stopping City doing what City do so well against every other team they play. Southampton didn't let them do that. How often do we see, okay, yes, City dominated possession over 60%, but that is always normally...
That's quite low for them.
Yeah.
But that's normally always around the opposition's penalty area. They're always in that kind of final third, like pinging it around. Southampton didn't let them do that. They were kind of limited to their own half / the middle of the pitch. That's where, and City can't be too effective from there. Yes, they're always you always expect them to have that kind of final punch, as Ralph would say, because of the quality they've got on the pitch. But Southampton just didn't let them do it. And, they froze Fernandinho out of the game, Gundogan, they were just brilliant, I thought. And that for me is what I'd rather talk about than whether it was a penalty or wasn't a penalty. I just thought, they carried out Ralph's instructions to an absolute T. And I don't even think they rode their luck at times. I generally thought they just were absolutely sterling. And yeah, all because City only had about 10 minutes to prepare for the game. So we're with Pep on that one.
I'm not having that City have disadvantages. I mean, Jesus.
Oh, I know. It's like thinking about, he's had a bit of a poor week though, hasn't he, Pep? He's come out and openly criticised the head of their supporters' trust, and you just think, come on.
Munchie, when I see, obviously it's all relative because they've got so many fantastic players, but I was quite pleased when I see Gabriel Jesus on the team sheet and Bernardo Silva, because they're not as good as Foden and De Bruyne and Mahrez. Mahrez, I was delighted to see him not playing. I mean, I'd rather see Sterling playing than him, because there's a couple of players there who are not absolute world beaters. But it got a bit scary when they brought those three lads on. I mean, Foden, De Bruyne and Mahrez. I mean, have three subs that good ever been brought on in any Premier League game? I doubt it. It's absolutely mad. So I'm not having the narrative that poor old City, get in the bin.
No, I think also a quick word on that save from McCarthy to deny Foden's header. I mean, I thought he hadn't had much to do all game, but I just thought that was an absolute top quality save.
Yeah.
Right at the end, I thought just a bit of credit for him on that.
The good thing was we didn't go and just park the bus, did we? That was the thing.
No,
I thought overall it was quite a brave performance.
Yeah, but Nathan Redmond had a great chance that did kind of what Nathan Redmond did and just didn't come to anything. I mean, he should have had a shot. Elyounoussi let one go on the edge of the area when, I suppose in hindsight, you want to see him put his boot through it. There were chances for Southampton, but yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I think most of us probably expected a 3-4-0.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should get too picky.
The predictions last week, we were talking 4 at least, weren't we?
So I don't think we should get too picky with Redmond fluffing his lines or anything like that.
I'll tell you what, it was interesting. Did you watch Match of the Day last night? It was really interesting because the highlights only showed City attacking and the penalty incident. And then at the end of the game, Jermaine Genius sort of reviewed, little bits from the game, and it was all Saints attacking play, which they didn't put in the original highlights. And I've noticed that before when we've played the big clubs, they only sort of edit the game down to show all the stuff that the big clubs did going forward. It's a real strange one, that, but again, it's I guess something we shouldn't be surprised at.
We're used to it though, aren't we? That's the thing. So I mean, the first time in 7 home games that City have failed to score. We mentioned McCarthy's save. A word for the back four, back-to-back clean sheets for the first time since January. What do we make of the back four from the weekend, Steve?
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be change again for. Well, probably change again for midweek
Tuesday,
and then again for next weekend, because I mean we don't know how serious Jack Stevens' injury is, but it was obviously serious enough to force him off midway through the first half. So you would assume that he's probably out for a period of time. So that makes us probably assume that Lianco will probably get a game on Tuesday night, which will be interesting. See how that goes. That could be all kinds of fun. Given that Sheffield United have scored 9 goals in their last 2 games, I think they'd only scored like 1 in their first 5 or something mad. So they've had a real change of form overnight. But I think we're looking all right. We're looking organised, and I think the key as ever. And this goes back years. The key for us having a half decent defence is giving the back four and the goalkeeper protection from midfield. And it's something that we highlighted last week as well, where Gineppo in particular was given his fullback, whichever side he was on at the time, was giving his fullback loads of help. So we were basically doubling up on West Ham's wide players. And today it was much more condensed because City would rather play through the middle. If we're letting their fullbacks go around the outside and put crosses in the air, we've kind of won the battle there, because we would expect to win most things in the air against Ilkay Gundogan, Raheem Sterling. Jesus is reasonable in the air, but not anything special. And that was kind of how we won that game during lockdown, because we thought we made the pitch really, really narrow, forced them to go wide, and blocked everything off. And just either block crosses or headed them all away, and they had nothing really else to throw at us. And to be honest, that chance in injury time only really came about because we switched off a little bit, and McCarthy bailed Redmond out with a great save. But yeah, we're looking a lot better. I mean, let's be honest. If we'd had this conversation, or at least had a prediction that within 6 months our defence after that Man United game would be in this sort of state, I think we'd have probably had a bit of a laugh and a chuckle and said, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah, consecutive clean sheets, never.
Yeah. Against good teams as well.
Against decent sides, yeah. The only downside, Glen, Jack Stevens obviously leaving the pitch, clutching his leg. At the time of recording, we're still not entirely sure what that might be, but that's someone that's impressed you this season, and is going to be a loss if he's out for a couple of games.
Yeah, it is, and it's always a bit of a worry when someone goes down and you can't see why, and there's no one near them. That's always the sort of nightmare scenario for a player. If you get injured in a tackle, you can at least see what it was all about. So hopefully it's nothing too bad. I don't think he's the sort of guy that would leave the pitch unless it was pretty bad. And the way he was limping around the pitch at the end, to get round to the dugout, it was very, very slow, put it that way. So it does worry me a bit that he might be out for a bit of time. But it's a shame for him, because he's gone from being probably 4th choice centre half last year to being a regular starter, and he's going to be back to square one again if he's out for a sort of a period of time. So hope he makes a decent recovery and is back fairly soon.
Does it feel to you, Dan, that maybe we've ironed out some of the flaws at the back from last season? Is it more evident what Ralph and the team have been working on during pre-season and also the international break?
Yeah, I think so. Steve's already mentioned that the Man United game and the run towards the end of the last season was just poor, wasn't it? I think every player kind of had their head down, and yeah, it wasn't good, and everyone looked a bit clueless, bearing in mind they've been doing the same thing kind of with Ralph now since 2018. So, but this season there does seem to be a marked difference. I mean, minus the Everton game, because the Everton game was all too familiar as to what we saw towards the back end of the previous campaign. But certainly this season, I think that the way they've responded to that defeat at Goodison Park and kind of regrouped, rallied around, and just got on with it, I think. And Ralph, to be fair, Ralph was more disappointed after the Everton game about the missed chances and stuff. And you could see he was still confident that it will click. Don't worry, that was kind of a blip. And yes, they haven't won yet, but I think there's been enough, more than enough positive signs to think that the defence does look pretty steady. I did like the partnership of Stevens and Salisu. I don't particularly like Bednarek and Stevens as a pair. It'll be interesting how Bednarek and Salisu get on. But yeah, fingers crossed for Jack that it's nothing too serious, because he, as has already been mentioned, he went from 4th choice to one of the first names on the team sheet, and you wouldn't have thought that fans would be missing Jack Stevens at the starting 11 a couple of years ago when he could do no right for wrong. So fingers crossed he's back quick.
So we're undefeated in 4 and we held the champions at their own place, which is pretty good. However, we're still looking for that first win and goals are few and far between at the moment, Steve. How are we going to put that right?
Playing against teams that are rubbish at defending.
Playing Norwich.
That'd be nice. Yeah, I mean, Norwich have lost 16 Premier League games in a row now, I think.
Good effort, isn't it?
Which is that's some going. I mean, I don't think even Derby managed that. But yeah, I mean, I think playing against a team where they're not as strong at the back. I mean, City's defence is a little bit ropey, but you've always got to have in mind what they could do to you. And I'm not hugely surprised that. I mean, I don't think Edison had any serious saves to make. He had a couple on. I think we had 2 on target, didn't we? To their 1, which is kind of a little bit of an anomaly, I think. But I don't think they were anything that he shouldn't have saved. So yeah, getting better quality chances, I think, is important. So I would imagine we'll have a slightly more attacking outlook against most of the other teams in the league, to be honest. So I mean, starting with Wolves on Sunday, I would expect us to be much more on the front foot. I mean, Wolves looked really poor yesterday in their game against Brentford. Yeah. I mean, Brentford were good, to be fair. So part of it is that Brentford made Wolves look bad, but Wolves have looked quite bad all season so far. So Jimenez doesn't quite look as if he's got his sharpness back yet, which is understandable to an extent. But you would have thought they might have spent the money they got for Diogo Jota a little bit better in terms of giving him a little bit of support. So I think Wolves are there for the taking. But yeah, I think probably looking to force the game from wide positions, I think, is the way to go for us. I'm not sure we've got quite enough guile in central positions at the moment, but we'll see. See what kind of sort of tombola team Ralph comes up with for next Sunday. Because let's face it, we ain't going to be able to guess it.
And you're not starting to panic yet, are you, Glenn? The goals are going to come. That winner come.
It does worry me a little bit that without Stuart Armstrong, we seem to be missing that link up to the strikers. I mean, the problem was yesterday. It was highlighted a few times, is that and Ralph mentioned it as well, is that the ball up to the strikers. You assume he's talking about the wide players. Just hasn't been good enough, and I think that's been the case more or less all season. And the wide players, the creative players, have got to step up and start sort of feeding the strikers so they can have more attempts on goal. At the moment, they're having to create things for themselves. So, we need Redmond, Elianusi, Gineppo, whoever's playing in the wide areas, to actually step up and provide some decent service for the strikers. So it does worry me slightly, but I largely agree with Steve. We've had a run of games against teams and fixtures that we normally struggle with. And I know I think we got beat by Wolves at home last year, but they're a different team this year. They've got a new manager who seems to be struggling. I did always wonder that when Nuno left, whether the house of cards would fall down, because remember, it's all built on the relationship with the agent who seems to get them all their players. So you do wonder if they are going to struggle this year. I mean, they've still got a couple of good ones. Adama Traore is always dangerous, but his stats and what he actually produces don't really bear it out much. So he had a half decent game against us last year in the second half. I do remember that. But we have to contain him, and then we should be able to find a way to score some goals against them. And if we do struggle to score against Wolves, then there is definitely something there that needs to be addressed.
There is a problem there. Dan, a final word on Ralph's dress sense. Still undefeated in the waistcoat. What was the tartan tie all about yesterday? Was that a bet, do we think?
Well, no, he donned that after West Ham. I mean, the West Ham one was fascinating because all through the game he was kind of smart but rugged in, sleeves rolled up, top button undone. Then he came down and sat down for his post-match press conference, sleeves rolled down, he had a tartan tie on. And I jokingly asked him whether that was a gift from Shea McAdams for his performance against Austria in the international break, and he joked and said no, but it is actually from Austria. And now he obviously wore against Man City, but Ralph's a superstitious guy. Like he is a superstitious guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's looked at that tie and thought, we kept the clean sheet against West Ham.
Good to wear it again.
He's worn it against Man City and they've kept the clean sheet. I mean, I'll be shocked if he turns up at Bramall Lane wearing what he wore against Man City. I'm expecting him to go full tracksuit for the Carabao Cup, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past Ralph. So
It's as unpredictable as the lineups at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, nothing's been as maverick as that one in pre-season with like the checked trousers and the chain. I mean, that was a seriously strong look that came out of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, you've got that, or you've got tracksuit bottoms that are about 4 sizes too tight.
The magic tracksuit, yeah.
It's what beggars can't be choosers.
Whatever works. I'm just wondering if GQ magazine do an award for the best dressed Premier League manager, because I think it's nailed on if they do.
Yeah, well, now Scott Parker's not there, maybe.
All eyes on the dugout next week. We mentioned Wolves briefly. 1 point and 1 place behind us in the league. What have we made to the start of their season? I know they lost at the weekend. Are they still going to be a threat, do you think, on next Sunday, Steve?
They'll be a threat, but they just look really toothless at the moment. I mean, you could argue a little bit like we do. So actually, it could be quite an interesting open game, but also one that's destined to finish 0-0 because neither of us can score for toffee. But they're not as obviously counter-attacking as they've been in previous years. The new manager seems to be getting them to be slightly more on the front foot, but I think that's possibly not helping them because they're still going with a back four which doesn't really suit Connor Cody. And if you're not putting enough midfielders in front of him, then if you got a fast striker, then they're just running straight past him. Going forward, as I said just now, Jimenez hasn't quite looked at it. They've got other options, but they're not really at the same level. They've still got that £35 million child coming off the bench. Who I know he's now going to go and score a hat trick on Sunday, but he looks absolute garbage.
Well, let's stick with it. It was a game that we lost last season. We had that unique situation where we played them in the FA Cup, didn't we? We won, and then we lost in the league after.
Which was obviously completely non-unique because we did exactly the same with Arsenal and also lost the league game. Having led, we'd
have taken the FA Cup win, I think. How do we get something out of this game on Sunday, Glenn? What do we need to do?
They're not a fantastic side, so you've just got to do the basics. You win football matches by doing the basics. You defend properly, you neutralise their obvious threats, and you carry an attacking threat at the other end of the pitch, and that's what we need to do. We need to feed the strikers. They're absolutely nothing to be scared of, and it's quite a pivotal game in the season because if we win this game, then people will look at the league table and go, Southampton have had a decent start. But if we lose it, we're going to be 15th, 16th in the table, and we've lost a home game against a team that we possibly should have beaten. All the fixtures we've had so far, including Newcastle away, have been games that we don't usually get much out of, and we weren't probably expecting to get a great deal out of. But we've got to win. In my mind, we've got to win this game. Just to sort of like feed into the confidence that that we have a bit of confidence. We know we're hard to beat, but there's more than being hard to beat. You've got to win some games, and this is one that I think we definitely should be targeting to win.
And it's obviously Chelsea away the week after. So does that make it even more important that we get something from the game, Dan?
Yeah, I think the way Glenn has just summed it up there, I don't think I could add too much to that, to be honest. Although, as we've all said, no one expected Southampton to get anything from the Etihad. So, but Chelsea, they look, there was another good win for them today, wasn't it? So it's going to be an important game. I mean, it's one they shouldn't lose. I mean, given the start Wolves have had, you'd be really disappointed if they did lose. But then I still think Wolves still have got a few good players in the squad, and a draw wouldn't necessarily be the worst result in the world. But as Glenn said, if they can win, then all of a sudden people look at Southampton and think, you know what, we could have seen them having kind of no points from their first 6 games, and they've actually now got 7, I think it'll be, if they won. And, when you consider the teams they face, that wouldn't be bad going.
So who starts then, Steve, for you?
I think partly we'll make that call based on who does well on Tuesday night. I think while we're not going to put a full strength side out there, we'll probably only make half a team's worth of changes this time rather than the 9 that we did at Newport. Largely because, I think we've got 2 or 3 players now out injured, so that reduces the number of kind of available second choice options. But also because we're playing a much higher quality of opposition. And there's an opportunity for players like Redmond, Gineppo, people like that who might start on Tuesday night. Teller as well. Probably a good example. If you have a good game in that one, then you've got an opportunity to kind of get in the starting lineup for Sunday, because then all of a sudden there's a bit of momentum behind your form, and we've got options. So if we've got one player in a particular position playing well and another player who's not, swap them over. Get the guy who's kind of on an upward trend into the side and see how it goes. I'm sure we discussed this last week with the sort of squad depth, and we should be able to kind of rotate people out now if they're having a bad time of things, because we've got backup options of a similar, if not better, quality, and we've got to kind of keep with that sort of mental idea of nobody's place is secure in this team. You've got to still work for it.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, because Elyounoussi's in the team now because he played well at Newport. You know, he scored a hat-trick, and that alerted Ralph to sort of like how well he could play, and he's got in the league team and he's done pretty well, and I thought he did pretty well on against City as well.
Well, he's essentially got two teams now, isn't he, Ralph? I mean, he could
more or less, yeah.
He could make 11 changes against. Are we talking about Sheffield? He could make 11 changes against Sheffield.
Yeah, could do
right throughout the whole team, and that's something that he's wanted for ages. But as we've all said, it's about how you manage that, and so far he's doing a pretty good job of it. Brozier will be an interesting one.
Let's do score predictions for Sunday first, shall we? Bearing in mind, Dan, you're the only person to have got a score prediction right so far this season, which I think was the Newcastle one. So please don't read into our predictions too much.
Did I get that right? Did I?
You said 2-2 for Newcastle.
Blimey, yeah. I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I think we just assume that we all get them so wrong. It's not worth checking. But no, you're the only person that's managed to call a result so far this season. So Dan, do you want to go first for the Wolves game?
2-1 Southampton.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I kind of don't see Wolves scoring. I think 2-0.
And Glenn?
Yeah, I'm going to say exactly the same as Steve. I reckon 2-0.
Okay. A word on Sheffield United, then the Carabao Cup. That's Tuesday night. Dan, we know this is a competition that he's going to take seriously.
Well, as I've just said, he's got two teams, and the other players that are going to come in, if he does make changes, I think are going to be ones that are thinking they should be playing in the Premier League. Just off the top of my head, you could go obviously Forster. Valerie, Lianco. I don't know now with Jack out. I guess you have to play kind of Bednarek or Salisu. Left back, you can go with Perot. He obviously missed the last game. Midfield, I suppose that's the one area where you can't do too much with, but you could probably give Romeo or Prowse a rest and put Diallo in. The one for me on that game will be Brozier. I think if he plays and he plays well and he scores again, and obviously Shea Adams is yet to score. Adam Armstrong obviously scored a good goal against Everton. I think he's going to start kind of staking, he's going to have a real sort of point to go to Ralph and say, look, when you give me opportunities, I impress. I know I wasn't on the West Ham pod, but I thought his cameo at the end of that game was really impressive. And
yeah, it was.
It said a lot about his confidence, I think. He's just kind of one of those young players that just seems fearless, like Livramento. So I don't think it'll be too long before he is kind of possibly starting, and if he plays against Sheffield United and does well, I could see him starting against Wolves. So I think it'll be one where Ralph makes changes, but you'd still like to think that the second team, if he does make wholesale changes, is too strong for Sheffield United.
Well, Billy Sharp is their top scorer this season, isn't he, Steve? So I think they've got, 11 goals in their last 3 games? So it won't be easy, but they're there for the taking.
Yeah, it should be. And I would imagine that they'll probably make a few changes themselves. We know what the championship schedule is like. And one of their big issues last season was they just didn't have a deep squad. It wasn't good enough for the games that they were trying to compete in. And as a result, they basically lost most of their games. But in the championship, you're playing 2 or 3 games a week always. There's no let up, and I think they'll realise, especially with players like Sharp. I'd be amazed if Sharp features at all on Tuesday night, because he's 36. Yes, he's their top scorer, but they've got bigger fish to fry. They'll be looking to at least push for the playoffs again, because they've only got 3 years of parachute payments, and that money runs out pretty quickly.
And they've got Derby and Middlesbrough, I think, as their next 2 games. So they're historically big games. So hopefully this time next week then, we'll be talking about a good win on Tuesday and a decent win on Sunday, all being well. Fingers crossed. Quick word before we finish on Will Smallbone, who was back. I think we're all pleased to see pictures of him back training after 9 months. Someone the club clearly rate quite highly as well, Dan, because they've I know you've written about him and they've spoken about him really positively, although we've only seen it in flashes.
Yeah, I've written about him in the past, and he is one that, they really do rate his kind of technical ability on the ball. And yeah, to have the injury he did against Leicester was a real kind of killer blow for him, especially kind of being so young and having a little bit of a go in the team off the bench and so on. But, the recovery's taken its time. That's fine. There's no point rushing something like that. And the fact he's edging closer to a return, it gives Ralph another option. And this is a player that, was on the periphery of the first team last year and is going to want to be, back in there again, which is, another good headache for Ralph, for him to kind of manage that situation. And it's all about options, I think, isn't it? And we've said it so many times, but Ralph has options, and Will Smallbone will be another one when he's ready to play, which is only a good thing.
This is the Total Saints podcast, proudly underpinned by our TSP patrons.
Yes, I want to be in that number when the Saints go marching in.
Last week we shared the exciting news that the Total Saints Icons store is now live. We partnered up with one of our patrons, Alistair Downs, to create a unique range of Saints merchandise. Each design focuses on an iconic moment from Saints history. 25% of all proceeds are being donated to the Saints Foundation at the end of the season. You can find the link on the TSP website. To celebrate the launch, we've been running a competition across our social media pages so that you can win a £30 voucher to spend in the new store. And congratulations to Jamie Pragnell on Twitter. You've won the first £30 voucher to spend in our Total Saints Icons store. So we'll be in touch on Twitter. Keep an eye on your inbox, and congratulations, Jamie. If you're a paying subscriber to the Total Saints podcast, there's a good chance you've already had your discount code through to use in the Total Saints Icons store. If you're in our Lambert, Benali or Letizier tiers, you've been sent a discount code through Patreon, so make sure you check your inbox for that. The discounts are active until October the 1st, and we'll send out a new one every single month. That brings us on to the Patreons shout. Hello to Colt and Dave and Ed and Phil in our Matt Letizier tier, and also Nick Reed, who is in our Francis Benali tier. And that, I think, is about it for episode 168. My thanks as always to Steve, Glenn and Dan. Thank you, chaps.
Thank you.
Welcome.
To find out more about becoming a TSP patron, check out the website where you can join our Bobby Stokes tier for just £5 a month. You can find all the recent episodes of the Total Saints podcast on our YouTube channel, so go and check that out and hit subscribe whilst you're there. And don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening. If that's on Apple Podcast, we'd love a rating and a review. On the socials, we are at Total Saints Pod. That's on Twitter and Facebook. And you can always get in touch with us. Just drop us an email via the website. Thank you for listening, and have a great week.